Joining us. My name's William Page. I look after the sales team at IP Global. We're joined today by Arish Capital. We've got Rakesh, who's sitting there in some lovely weather by the looks of it. And we've got Rosalia, who... Rosalia, you're in Dubai, aren't you?
I am, yes.
That's still not too bad. Very good. Well, thank you both for joining us. Gosh, I think this must be... We've had many webinars with you guys now over the years, but probably maybe our 5th or 6th webinar with you now, I think. So good. Yeah, I'm sure a few of our audience know you, but we look forward to hearing a little bit more about what you guys are doing in Portugal, and topically some real in-depth information into what's going on with the golden visa at the moment in Portugal, because there's some real changes coming. There's a lot of pressure at the moment from the population, actually, and residents in some of these cities, and I think the Prime Minister is having to make some big decisions. So I think really to start off, I'm not going to speak too much this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are, about what we do at IP Global, because I think we need to crack on with the topic as time's a bit short. But ultimately, it appears that the Golden Visa program is going to be revamped, maybe completely cancelled. There is a window of opportunity to get in, and if you're on this call this afternoon, then, if this is of interest to you, then, you need to be making some quick decisions as to what you're going to do if this is a route that you want to take. So, yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to our hosts, and at the end, we'll take some questions. Please do pop them into the question box, and we'll answer those at the back end of the presentation.
Okay, super. Thank you, William. Thank you, IPG. It's a pleasure to be back with you guys, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever everyone is dialing in from. William, you're right. I think there are some changes afoot. As of now, nothing has technically changed in the law, but the Golden Visa program in Portugal is certainly up for review, which means that in the coming sort of months, we are expecting that there will be changes. Whether those changes lead to different conditions or indeed the entire curtailment of the program remains to be seen. But I do think that now is the time for people that have been considering this perhaps for a longer period of time. The point of this webinar is really to take you through sort of that journey into Portugal. And we will be covering sort of what the potential changes might be and versus where we are at the moment, which, as I say, nothing has changed technically, which is why this webinar is called The Last Chance for Golden Visa. So just so people don't get bored just with my voice, we're going to be splitting the presentation up between Rosalie and myself. And the presentation is organized into 3 parts. The first part is really just a quick introduction to Arish, who we are, what we do. We then move on to the country of Portugal. We go through that sort of investment hypothesis, why Portugal, why it's a good place for investment. We then land upon the Golden Visa program. What are the conditions to enter into it? And indeed, what are these changes that may be happening about? And then finally, we land on our current developments, which are indeed Golden Visa eligible under the current. So without further ado, let me give you just a quick introduction to Arish, who we are and what we do. So Arish is a real estate investment and development company. We've been going now for coming up to 12 years. We have our offices in London, that's where our head office is, in Dubai, which is where the sales and operations team sit, and obviously we have an office in Lisbon, which looks after all of our Portuguese investments. We have various sort of investments into Portugal. We have now embarked upon 12 of these Golden Visa related investments, so we're very experienced in that segment of the market. But we also have other investments in Portugal that are not Golden Visa related. So for example, we're working with Lisbon University to build out their student accommodation facility. So that is a quick introduction to us, who we are and what we do. But I think let's start at the beginning in terms of the investment hypothesis. Why Portugal? Why would you put your money there? And let me hand over to Rosalia to start you off on that journey a little bit. So Rosalia, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rak, and thank you, William and IPG, for hosting us today. Good afternoon, everyone. So if we move to the next slide, that's going to demonstrate what were the considerations that Arish had when we were looking into expanding to different markets from the UK. So if we move, please, to the next slide. Next one, please. So the time that Brexit was announced, we accelerated the plan to move into other countries. We studied different countries in Europe, from south of Europe, east of Europe, and it was Portugal that ticked all the boxes that we thought were relevant, and are actually the ones that probably many of our clients have gone through this. So one of them, and if we continue pressing, please, for the animation. So one of them was the stable government. It's very important when we look into a country that we see a government that gives us stable context, and that encourages also the foreign direct investment, an economy that was growing but also mature and well diversified, and a real estate market that was growing but still that was undervalued against Europe, which gives us that indication that we can expect a good appreciation. And that was the hypothesis that we had back 5 years ago when we established ourselves in Portugal, but today continue to be the case. It is a market that is undervalued against Europe, and is where many of the commentators of the market are going to as the market to invest, to seek for that growth in the prices. So before we get into the real estate market and we learn about the golden visa, which is the piece that has brought us together today, we wanted to present Portugal as a country for those that haven't visited. And if we move to the next slide, we're going to see some of the key information for the country. So it is a Mediterranean country, part of the European Union, relatively small. We have just about 10 million population, but it's actually a very modern and prosperous country. When you visit Portugal, it's very actually nice to see that is the infrastructure of Portugal, from the airports, the roads, the trains, universities, healthcare is very modern, and one of the tops actually in Europe. It is a country that is very international also. So their official language is the Portuguese, but they widely speak also English and Spanish. Every from the taxi driver that picks you up from the airport, to the hotel, the shops, the lawyers, the doctors, everyone speaks fluent English. About 60% of the population. A couple of things that are also very relevant in Portugal, and that is factors for many to consider the country as a second residency or citizenship, is that Portugal has universal and free access to healthcare and education, and this is since 1979. So for those that have lately many from the US, and this is one of the factors that they value very, very much. So if we move to the next slide and we focus now on the government, that was one of those factors that we considered when expanded far from the UK. We see that Portugal is a democratic country since 1976. But one of the things that actually is quite relevant is that Portugal is the third most peaceful country in the world, and this only after Iceland and New Zealand. So we spoke that Portugal is very open, has a big expat population. It is a modern country, it's part of Europe, but it still is one of the safest countries in the world. So this is something that, again, from many of our clients coming from the US, from some other countries in Latin America and Asia, etc., this is something very important. If we consider to have a second passport, we want it to be from a safe, stable country. If we move to the next slide, we will see now the economy. We were talking about the economy, that it is a very well diversified, so it doesn't really rely on any of the sectors. It's strong on tourism, it's strong in real estate, but actually the strongest are manufacturing into textile, metals, and lately, actually, Portugal has become one of the biggest hubs for technology. In Europe has become very, very relevant. And if we move to the next slide, we see many of the top multinationals that are establishing themselves either for their European headquarters or for their technology division in Portugal, which is again increasing very much the skilled population for expats in the country. When we move to the next slide, we now get to the real estate market and what can we expect from it. So for the last 10 years or so, we have seen growth in the prices in the real estate. If we move to the next slide, please, growth in the prices and real estate very stable from 5 to 12% yearly. In the last year, we have actually a 9.9%, and we expect this year to end in about 2-digit number. One of the factors that we mentioned at the beginning, very relevant, is that despite the continuous growth of the country, we remain to be undervalued as against the neighbor countries in Europe, which is what gives us this confidence to continue investing in the country, seeking for that pull to par effect to the rest of Europe. We can now move to the next slides. And with all these and an overview about the country, its economy, its government, we are now going to give some details on the Golden Visa program and what it makes it different from any other residency program that the country has. So if we move now to the part of the Golden Visa, which is in next slide, please, we will see that the program was established in 2012 and is a government established a program with over 29,000 cards that were issued since the beginning and almost 7 billion euros invested. So very much supported. As of now, we know what are very much the conditions, the process, the timing, well tested. Many of the investors already have got their goal of obtaining the passport at the end of the residency of the 5-year time. But if we move to next, we are going now into the detail on how we reach all these benefits that later on we will describe. So the easiest, the most popular avenue is the investment into the real estate. People feel more confident because there is a collateral, there is a tangible asset behind the program. And it's also, of course, again, something that will allow a cash flow, a return, and later on seeking for that appreciation. The standard amount to invest in the Golden Visa program in Portugal is 500,000 euros. This is the amount that was initially proposed from in the government in 2012. However, since then and until today, there was some revisions in the program allowing this amount to go down to 350,000 euros, and this would depend on the type of property and on the location where the property is. Ares Capital Partners is specialized in these two last investment amount, which is 280,000 and 350. Both of them are schemes that require a refurbishment. So in order to entitle for any of this amount, rather than the 500,000, we will have to invest in a property that is for refurbishment. If we do it in the 350,000 euros, it could be located in the prime areas such as Lisbon city center and Porto, but it would have to be commercial investment. My colleague Rakesh will give some more details on that. But if we want to really reduce that amount to the minimum possible, we could invest in residential, but it would have to be in areas less populated, a little bit outside the city centers. We will today present a project that entitles for this amount and is around 1 hour away from Lisbon. There are other 3 paths to invest in the program, but these all are through investment funds or shares in Portuguese companies or the creation of a Portuguese company with 10 jobs. These are more risk-taking paths, but also a lot more time-consuming, and maybe the point that we are today, it would be a little bit too lengthy in order to access this window that William mentioned. So if we go to the next slide, we will see once we have done our real estate investment within these 4 categories, we will get to have a number of benefits that are very, very popular. We move to the next slide, please. So what are the benefits and what are the requirements? So the first thing to mention about the Golden Visa, which is the major difference with any other program, and this is a residency by investment. So I will not have to relocate to the country. This is the main difference amongst any other residency programs that a country may have. I do an investment in real estate and I will benefit from the right to live in the country if I decide to do so, but I will not have the obligation to relocate my family. The only requirement that I will have is to visit the country 7 days a year. So that's something very easy to manage. Along that, the other requirements that I have is only to have valid passport and to have clean criminal records. So this is a very objective and document-based process. It is anti-constitutional to have any subjective criteria in order to apply for the residency. There is no differentiation in between origin, country of origin, religion, age, gender, etc. I only need to make my investment, have clean criminal records, my passport, and have stay in the country 7 days a year. What are the privileges, the benefits that this will give me? First thing is that one single investment is going to give me access for not only myself as main applicant, but also all my dependents, family members. These will include my kids up to the age of 18, or those that are above 18, but that are still dependent to me, which I can prove if they are single and they are full-time students, and also my, of course, spouse and my parents and parents-in-law, provided that they are also dependent above 65. So one single investment, we do have families that are 10, 12 members. We have families that are only 2, 3, 4. Depends on the size of the family and the structure. They are all very welcome, provided they have those conditions that I mentioned. All of them, from the day the card is issued, they will have the right to live in Portugal. Again, this is a right. This is not an obligation. I go to the airport, I move my family next day, just with my residency card. If I do so, I will be able to work, salaried or self-employed. I will be able to use the free healthcare, the free education, and I will be able to travel in all Schengen area and stay in each of those countries up to 90 days. So for many of the countries that are, some of our clients are coming from countries that they do have some challenges in traveling. This is a big, actually, a big freedom that they are very much seeking for. And then a question that we're always asked when we reach this point, all this privilege, do they come at a tax cost? Do I have any tax impact on doing this program? And the answer is no. I do. The fact that I obtain a residency card does not make me tax resident in the country. Again, I'm not moving to the country, I'm only having a residency right. So as long as I don't move to Portugal, I will continue to be tax resident in my country of origin with no impact. I will continue to pay taxes in my country of origin, or however it is my tax structure at the moment, and the only taxes that I will pay are in Portugal are for the income that I generate in Portugal. Therefore, if I have a real estate investment that is rented out, that is generating a rental income, I will pay taxes for that. But all of my income at the moment from any other source, it will continue to be taxed as per my current situation. It is actually, even if I do the decide to move to Portugal, many of our clients actually think that that is an option that at some point they will exercise. It's worth to mention that Portugal is the most attractive country in Europe, also tax-wise. So even if I choose to be tax resident in Portugal, Portugal attracts the highest number of millionaire migration in Europe every year. And it's not only because of the lifestyle, the safety, the privacy that the country offers, but it's also for the tax flexibility that gives us. Now, when I reach these 5 years of residency with all these privileges, I will get the option to apply either for permanent residency or citizenship. Majority of our clients will go for the citizenship. That's the goal, to have a passport from Portugal. However, for those that are coming from countries that are not allowed the dual citizenship, they would apply for the permanent residency. None of these two will require for me to hold my real estate anymore. So once I have achieved my goal of permanent residency or citizenship, I will be able to sell my property and continue enjoying all the benefits. Now, what is the difference of having a residency, whether it is golden visa, temporary or permanent, and a citizenship. The citizenship expands all my rights to the entire Europe. So I will not only be able to work, live, and use the healthcare and education in Portugal, I will be able to do that in all Europe. So many of the clients that have the small kids, they are aiming to one day, when they have their passport, have their kids studying in the European universities. And this actually is a huge saving, because as European passports, you get to have fees that are around 1/10 of the standard fees in all of those universities. To give you a very quick sample, one of our clients have their kids in the University of Dublin studying medicine. A European passport will pay around 3,000 euros per year. A non-European will pay about 40,000 euros. So it's a huge difference, and all those privileges will come once I have obtained my passport. We can move now to the next slide. And just to give you a wider also a picture on how much all these will cost. First thing, of course, I have to do my real estate investment. We saw that is either 280,000 euros or 350. That will have the real estate transactional costs and taxes, which are around a 7.5%. And then the second group of expenses would be the golden visa fees for the government, the cost of those cards that I'm going to obtain. It is around 5,300 euros per card, which means that as during those 5 years, I'm going to have to do 2 renewals, first issuance plus 2 renewals until I apply for my passport. It will be around 12,000 euros per person until the time I apply for the passport. So 5-year cost per card, around 12,000 euros, a family of 4, around 50,000 euros. We do have a very detailed Excel that calculates all those codes depending on the preference on the investment and depending on the structure of the family. And now we reach to the point to understand what's happening in Portugal, why this program is being tested at the moment, and what we can expect with all these changes. So on the 16th of February, there was press release, an announcement from the government with their intention to terminate the program. The program, as we said, has been 12 years in Portugal, very successful, large investment. The government has decided that it's time to terminate, associating the fact to the accessibility to homes for the local people. They believe that is impacting in the price of the property. There is a lot of discussion going around this, a lot of opposition, and as of now, the law hasn't changed yet. For the law to be actually implemented and approved in the country, we need first to have a parliament approval. We are still awaiting that parliament meeting and the final draft of the law, which is not yet been published. And once this is done, the President of the República will also have to give the approval. He may decide to involve the constitutional courts. And only once all this has happened, the law can be published and it can be entered into effect. Normally, this kind of changes give a grace period, which is what happened in the last changes of the golden visa in 2021. So as of now, the facts are that we do have an intention from the government to terminate the program. There is a lot of detail to it, but as of now, continue to be an intention. We have a minimum period around 2-3 months that we can expect that all these processes that are necessary for a law to be changed will have at least that period to 2-3 months for the process before the law is changed, and it's yet to be seen whether that is going to be a change or a termination. One more thing, and before I pass over again to my colleague to talk about investments and maybe to add something on these changes, is that for the confidence and of all our clients, the contracts that are signed on the sales and purchase agreement that are for the purpose of the golden visa, they all come with clauses of protection in case of the change of law with refundability of the amounts paid, and also buyback if we have already signed the sales and purchase agreement. So all of these are very much detailed that we can discuss with each of you if you're willing and you're interested in proceeding. But just to know, the law may change and your contracts will have protection if you decided to onboard. Rek, I don't know if you want to add anything on this point or you want to take from here to the investment. Thank you.
Yep, perfect. I think that was great, Rossi. Thank you. Probably just to recap in terms of where we are on that journey, because I think we've had the introduction to the country of Portugal. We've understood a little bit about the real estate market. We've then gone through the Golden Visa program, how it works, what the conditions are. And lastly, Rossi just highlighted the fact that the Golden Visa program may be changing. And hence this may be a limited window of opportunity for those people that are thinking about this and perhaps willing to move quickly. Obviously, because of this sort of cloud of doubt that's been created regarding the PM's announcement, notwithstanding that we believe there will be an orderly timeline to change the program or indeed end it, if clearly people that will be listening to this for the first time are not going to be expert in Portuguese law, and we have a very strong familiarity with it, and hence the reason why, as Rossi mentioned, for anyone moving quickly, we do have refundability clauses within our purchase contract, so that if the law does somehow change and it impacts your ability to apply for a Golden Visa, then you would reverse the transaction. So to now move on to the sort of final part of the presentation, which is looking at the developments that are indeed Golden Visa eligible and the ones that we are offering. Just broadly speaking, Rossi mentioned that we're specialized in two categories, which are the 280,000 investment products and the 350,000 investment products. Just to get people's minds organized what that means in a real life context. Actually, there's two types of Golden Visa products at the moment. Those that are in city centers, which are, say, Lisbon and Porto. And if it's in a city center, then it can only be a commercial investment in a renovation category, which comes at the investment threshold of 350,000. If, however, people are not that wedded in investing in city centers and they're happy to look in more rural locations, well, in that case, the investment category can also include residential investment, so apartments, etc. And they will also be a renovation type of investment, but they come at an investment threshold at 280,000. So we have both options available, but just to organize people's minds, city center means commercial, outside of city centers will mean commercial and residential. So moving to our commercial investment opportunity, and because it's commercial, it's in the city center, which is in Lisbon, and it is a commercial building that will be operated as co-working spaces. It's actually in Lisbon city center in a micro location known as South Saldanha, hence the name Sosa Urban. And because it's a renovation of an existing building, the investment threshold is from 350,000. So starting with the location, because obviously that's going to be key. For those of you that have been to Lisbon, this will perhaps feel a little bit familiar. And for those that you haven't, this photo actually in the green highlighted area is actually the area which is Avenida Liberdade. Avenida Liberdade is the equivalent of Bond Street in London, Fifth Avenue, New York. It's the most central boulevard within Lisbon city center. And it's also the green highlighted area, the area that is known as Central Business District 1. So the most sort of prime area within Lisbon city center. We've done a couple of assets in this location in terms of investment that are indeed Golden Visa eligible. Liberty Lisbon is the one that sold out in record time. It was also partly retail, partly co-working spaces. Sosa, which is the one we've launched around sort of 9 weeks ago now, is 7 minutes walk, and indeed it is in Central Business District 1. In terms of the building itself, it is an existing building and it needs to be in order for it to be Golden Visa qualifying. It's more than 30 years old. It is currently licensed as an office based building, and we are going to be keeping that office use, so there won't be any change of use, if you like, but we will be renovating the building, bringing it up to sort of 21st century standard, and post the renovation, it will be operated as co-working office spaces, flexible spaces. Now, just to give people that might be interested in this an idea of what the investment opportunity is, so you have it at the front of your minds. This is very much targeted at those investors who we know want to achieve a couple of things. Number one is they only want to be invested in a city centre because that's where they attach perhaps the best store of their investment in terms of value. Secondly, they want to have convenience. Thirdly, they want to realize their golden visa ambitions. But at the end of that golden visa, once it's been realized, they want to have exit liquidity. So this is very much set up with that in mind, in that investor comes in with the investment amount of 350,000. At year 8, we reacquire the investment from the investor. The purchase price when we reacquire it is at the market value in 8 years' time. So you benefit from the full upside and downside of the market. And it's market price minus 10%. The minus 10% is not a profit center for us. It's simply to cover the acquisition taxes that we would have to pay when we repurchase the investment back from you. So you have an entry point, you have an exit point by year 8. And in between that interim period, years 1 to 7, two things will happen. Number one is the investor will have the time to realize their golden visa ambitions. And secondly, because you've made an investment, there will also be the opportunity to earn some yield, i.e. income on your investment. And with this particular investment opportunity, there are two choices available, which I'll come on to in a second. But that is broadly the investment opportunity. You have an in and an out and some income along the way, together with realizing your golden visa. Now, coming back to the location, this is again a photo of the city center of Lisbon. Again, here we have Avenida Liberdade, Marcos Pombal, and the park. Sosa is just here. As we've indicated, we're wedged in between the Sheraton Hotel and the Atrium Mall. And all of these blue dots are our neighbors. So these are neighbors who we identify as being AAA tenants, if you like. They're the leading law firms, the five-star hotels, etc. So the list goes on. So we have 21 of what we would call these AAA tenants within a 0.7 kilometer radius of us. So again, highlighting that super prime location. But just to put that into context, this is the wider Lisbon city center conurbation, which does actually include 62 AAA tenants, ranging from Samsung, Coca-Cola, etc. But interestingly, within a 0.7 kilometer radius of us, we've captured a third of that audience. So that really does highlight how special this location is. Along with the location, and particularly because we're talking about operating a co-working space, offices, etc., we're actually very well connected. This is Lisbon's metro map, and we're at the intersection of perhaps 3 of the most important metro stops, Marcos Pombal, Park, and Picoas, within a 4 to 6 minute walking distance of Sosa, the building. So again, when you're thinking about people coming into the office, connectivity is important, and this is very well located in terms of accessibility. We're also 7 minutes walk away from Avenida Liberdade, which is where all of the high-end restaurants are, the five-star hotels, retail, fashion outlets, etc. Now, because we're talking about co-working spaces, office spaces, we've obviously took a little bit of time to understand our competitive environment. And these are 6 of the sort of closest operators within a 3 to 15 minute walking distance of us. And these are names that probably people are recognizing. You have Spaces, Regis, and obviously WeWork. So how are these guys performing? Because they are located within the same vicinity of us. So you can see here that they're all between 90 and 100% occupied. So that's a good starting point when you're trying to understand the depth of demand for this product. But actually, if you look at it in a little bit more detail, they're not only full, but they're also full at very high desk rates. So rates starting from 250 euros per desk per month, all the way up to 400 euros per desk per month. Now, all of this is interesting when you're looking at this asset class in and of itself, but perhaps more importantly, it's actually very important when you're looking at the valuation of this building, which obviously is a commercial building. Now, unlike residential asset valuations, which can be quite subjective. Actually, commercial buildings are quite objective in the way that they're valued. You simply take the rental income they produce and you divide it by a capitalization rate. This is an independent valuation that we have of the building, and it values the building taking into account the trophy asset location, etc., at just over 47 million post the renovation. So if you pause there for a second and you think, well, you have each investor coming in with 350,000, that makes room for approximately 135 investors. We launched this, as I said, around 9 weeks ago, and we've now sold, I think, 43 of those slots. So it's been taking quite well in terms of the market. This valuation also includes the methodology in which they've applied DES rates of 250 euros and a capitalization rate of 4.5%. So as a starting point, you have an independent valuation, which we can share with people if they want to see the full report, just to give that some fuller context and understanding the way this value stands up. If you look at the last 12 months of activity within Lisbon City Centre for prime office space, I think whether you've read Savills reports, JLL, CBRE, they've all reported very strong demand within CBD1. So that's a good starting point. We've seen that in evidence because we've looked at those DES rates in our competitive analysis. Here you can see on the left-hand side that actually transactions that have actually taken place in the last 12 months have used capitalization rates of between 4 and 4.5%. So that's good because that's where our valuation is at. In terms of understanding that demand supply imbalance, this is a 7-year chart where the light blue shows the demand, the dark blue shows the supply. So I think it's fair to say that we're fairly well placed because every year for the past 7 years, even throughout COVID, the demand for this type of product has far outstripped the supply. If we go a little bit more detailed and we look back at the price performance historically, we look back in the last 8 years, you can see that actually office prime rents in CBD1 have grown by about 39% cumulatively, so 4.8% per annum. And yields have sharpened from where they were 8 years ago at around 8% to where they are today between 4 and 4.5%. Now, if you pause there for a second and say, well, if that is the empirical data in terms of growth rates, if we simply took those historical trends and applied them forward, that would move the valuation of our building from where we are today, 47 million, to 69 million in 8 years' time. Now, the question is, could that happen? Well, indeed, it has happened historically in the last 8 years. But actually, as an investor, I probably want to be a little bit more conservative. And that's exactly what we've done, in that we've ignored the historic growth rates and we've simply applied a more conservative 3% growth rate. And even if you did that, you would still move the valuation of the building from where we are today, 47 million, to 59 million in 8 years' time. Now, this sensitivity analysis, whilst I appreciate it's a lot of number work, it's actually the reason that I feel a lot of investors get comfortable with this type of city center investment for 2 reasons. Number one is because it's a commercial building, the valuation exercise is very objective. But secondly, you can perform this type of sensitivity analysis because the data points exist for a location such as CBD1 because of the fact that it's so important in Portugal's real estate landscape. There are many commentators that give you these data points to do the sensitivity analysis. So looking forward, why do we think that even a 3% growth rate is possible? I think Rossi's touched upon some of that, in that Portugal continues to be substantially undervalued versus its European peers. We're all dealing with this inflation crisis that is hitting the world all over. Portugal's no exception. But I think it is fair to say on a relative basis, Portugal is faring slightly better. It does have better cost of living. More and more multinational companies are looking to relocate there. And because of that, that demand for office space continues to grow. So therefore, we expect that 3% growth rate to be entirely achievable on a conservative basis over the next 8 years. Because, as I mentioned, this is all very much open source in terms of data points, when you go away and do your own Google searches, you'll find a lot of these data points that I've mentioned. I think what is interesting is WeWorks have chosen to launch in Lisbon as their first sort of co-working space outside of the US. And they've justified their rationale based on a lot of these data points that we've already covered. So I'd encourage you to go away and read that article because it's quite interesting in terms of discussing the asset class of co-working spaces. Now, finally, I just want to end on some of that income, which obviously is important if you're making an investment. And I mentioned that you have an entry point, you have an exit point, and along the way, you have the ability to achieve some income. In this particular launch, we have two options for investors. This is a 8-year timeline. The investor comes in with 350,000. At year 8, they will exit at the market value. And along the way, they have the ability to earn some income. Now, option 1 is that we have a fixed income for the first 3 years and thereafter a market-based return. So the fix is 2% for year 1 and then 3% for the following 2 years. And thereafter, it's a market rate of return. We've indicated here approximately 4%. So this is for those investors that want to have a bit of certainty to start with, but then they're happy to be exposed to whatever the market may be paying in subsequent years. So that's option 1. And in option 2 is where investors don't really want to have that exposure to the market on their income. And that's where we've done exactly the same thing. We have an 8-year timeline, but for the entire 7 years, the income is fixed 2% for year 1. And then every year thereafter, it's at 3%. So that gives that certainty for those investors that want it. As part of our launch promotion, whenever we launch a new product, we give the ability for people to take advantage of a promotion. In this case, if they elected for option 2, it is possible to receive all of that income for the 7 years upfront. What do I mean by upfront? By the time the investors made the full investment of 350,000 and signed the deed, they would receive within 30 days that 70,000 income, which would otherwise be accrued over the 7 years upfront. So that makes it quite attractive also from a cash flow perspective. Now, just to summarize, I think, because we've talked at you guys for quite some time, this is an investment opportunity, which is indeed Golden Visa qualifying in CBD1, so perhaps the most prime location within Lisbon city centre. The investment threshold is 350,000. You do have some choices of some income along the way. There is confirmed exit liquidity because we're going to be reacquiring the investment back from you and therefore making it easy and convenient. So this all fits within that first category, which is the commercial investment, which is obviously in a city center. The second investment is also, these are just some of the images of Sosa post renovation. As you can see, it's very much up to 21st century standard and fitting in with that co-working type of feel that people now, I think, very much value and having flexibility. The second investment is a residential investment. It is in a location called Comporta, which is about an hour away from the city center of Lisbon. Because it fits within a location that qualifies for the lower investment threshold, the investment amount here is for 280,000. Key differences between this residential investment and the commercial one is primarily that the residential investments don't come with a buyback. These assets are freehold assets. You have a title deed over your own apartment, and therefore there's full market liquidity in the secondary market. And that is for those investors that perhaps want to have something that they can use if they are minded to sort of come to Portugal on a regular basis or indeed move there, or have it let out by a letting agency. Rossi, I don't know if you want to jump in and add anything to the Sunhouse Comporta residential project.
Thank you, Rec. Well, this is a project that has attracted both many local families and also foreigners because of the proximity to Lisbon. It's a beautiful place where naturally the wealthy local families have had their second residency, and now it's all over the news because of its beauty. It is, if you see in this map of Grândola, just stay for a second on that map, we see that it is a region that it has a beautiful natural park, all the green area, and then the proximity to the beach only at 20 minutes. It is considered less populated, most because the majority of part of it is actually a natural park, but in reality, it's a very much it is a place with a lot of restaurants and entertainment, especially towards the side of the beach. So if we now move, thank you, we see some of these golf courses that surround the area. We also see a lot of restaurants. So in summarize, is really a lifestyle brand, and all over the news we see here in Financial Times, Traveler, Forbes, etc. We see as Comporta, which is the beach area of the municipality where our project is the affordable luxury destination for all those holiday buyers or for property. 3 of the nicest restaurants, very elegant restaurants, hotels, the one Sublime. This hotel is a luxury hotel, countryside, also 10 minutes from us. About 1,000 euros per night into the high season. Now, despite that it's a place that it was historically a second residency, it's becoming now a very much extension of the of Lisbon, and they actually we see here a big logistic part that is being built just or is project approved, starting the construction this year, just 10 minutes away from us. If we move to the next slide, we'll see this is a 500 million euros investment with over 1,000 new employment in the area. So again, when we look into this location, it is very much interesting, both cash flows in the short term, high demand, but also in the long term. This is expected to have a very high demand because there is no big supply in this type of properties. And also, of course, as you can expect, this is a very big factor into the expected appreciation. This is the project eligible for Golden Visa, 280,000 euros, 92 units, and total 30 sold. This is a little bit unupdated. We are now at 38, 56 studios, 28 one bedrooms, and 8 two bedrooms, high top qualities. The refurbishment will start beginning of next year, and it's a 24 months construction period. It is a freehold and full ownership, so anyone investing with us will have full ownership and the title deed of each of the units. It has beautiful on-site pool of almost 300 square meters, has an on-site gym, terrace, gardens, 3 buildings, A, B, C, and D. All typologies are within these 3 buildings, some of them with a rooftop terrace. Some of those rooftop terrace, in the case of the 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, have a small pool plunge. So all of them beautiful, and this is something that later on, if you are interested, we can discuss what are the availability, what are the best units, but beautiful not only for investment, but also for lifestyle if you are intending to spend some time in Portugal.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Rossi. So there you have it. We've sort of tried to take everyone on a little bit of a journey of Portugal. Hopefully we've achieved that in some small way, but Will, maybe you want to open it up to some Q&As or some thoughts that you have?
Yeah, no, very interesting indeed. Well, look, yeah, going straight into Q&A then, there's 3 questions so far that have come in that we thought we'd answer live. First one is a Portuguese bank account necessary for the Golden Visa? Some banks are charging €5,000 to open an account. Can you shed any light on that, please?
Yes. So just to bring people up to some of the detail on this, this is a residency by investment program. From a policy perspective, the government is looking to encourage foreign direct investment by individuals into the country. And the best way that that can be evidenced is for investors having to open up a bank account in Portugal. And once they've opened up a bank account in Portugal, they would pull in their money from overseas, their home country, into that Portuguese bank account. And they must transact from that Portuguese bank account, which then acts as evidence that they've qualified to be Golden Visa eligible. So to answer the question, do you need a Portuguese bank account? Yes. Now, one thing just to add as a caveat to that is because the timeline to open up a bank account, I guess everywhere in the world at the moment, because compliance are the rulers of the world with all of the KYC checks, etc. A lot of people are taking into account of transacting through their Portuguese lawyers' bank accounts, for example, because that reduces the timeline to transact and ensuring that if the law does change, that they get in before the law changes. But nonetheless, at some point, they will need to have a Portuguese bank account open. So as of now, we're aware that the bank account process is taking longer than normal. We haven't heard that they're charging 5,000 euros. And if that is the case, we can certainly point you into the direction of Portuguese banks that we know are not charging that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that fee. Great. What are the other fees? Well, I think we outlined the fees in terms of you've got to purchase the investment for the required amount. You've got to pay your taxes on that purchase of property that you'd pay with any purchase, and then you've got some fees related to applying for the golden visa, which is one of these slides that Mary Carr I think is flicking back to. That makes it a clear layout. But of course, the guys are available to sort of speak to you in detail and perhaps give a sort of further breakdown of the fees if you'd like to see them, because there's sort of application fees, renewal fees, and everything. But yeah, no, I think that's pretty clear there. But look, of course, it's a complex process, and Irish Capital are very experienced of taking you through the whole thing, right? So if you come and explore this investment with us in Irish, then the whole reason of the proposal is not just the investment. The solution is actually there to take you through the whole journey and deliver you your citizenship and residency. Income tax question. I know we're not tax advisors. Always a big disclaimer when we answer a tax question, but it says there, given that you've got income coming in from the property, would this affect my worldwide income?
Yeah, and it's a good question, and we've touched upon it, but let me just recap in summary. By becoming a resident of Portugal, that's a legal resident, does not make you a tax resident of Portugal. So that's a good thing. Starting point is that if you are a golden visa holder, you will not be taxed in Portugal on your home country income, but you will be taxed in Portugal on any Portuguese source income. So if you have an investment asset in Portugal that generates rental income, for example, then that rental income is taxed in Portugal. The current tax rate on that is 28%. And so long as you don't actually physically move to Portugal, then you won't become a tax resident of Portugal. You'll only be a legal resident, which gives you the right to reside in Portugal should you choose to.
Exactly. And then I think in terms of like, would you get taxed on the income that you generate if you were, say, resident in America or look, that depends really, doesn't it, on whether there's a dual tax agreement between both countries. So it's
yes, exactly. And maybe I think Rossi touched upon this point. You're right, Will, that there will be specifics, and we're obviously not tax advisors, but that there are dual tax treaties between Portugal and various countries. The other thing to take note of is that Portugal does offer a non-habitual tax regime. So that's for those people, once they've accessed the golden visa and they physically want to move to Portugal, they can also elect themselves into a preferential tax regime for 10 years, which means that a lot of their income is taxed at 10%, a lot of the passive income that they may have from overseas, rental income from overseas, etc.
Okay. And then just to finish on the subject of tax, the income streams mentioned, which you went through, the payment was, what is it, not taxed before received? Is it taxed before the investor receives it, or is it up to them to obviously pay the tax on the received income?
It's taxed on a paid basis. So when the income flow is paid to the investor, that will be paid to their Portuguese bank account. And at that point, the taxes will become due on an annual basis, much like they are in every other country, annual system.
Yeah. Okay. So and again, we would have a solution to assist you with your tax returns. Right. Another question just about process, I think, really was just saying that who's going to help me with all of this in terms of guiding. I mean, there's a lawyer obviously involved. You recommend one or two people, and obviously you have a service to assist people through the process, as well as obviously building the development. So I think that you can rest assured that we can give you some answers about that if you'd like to discuss further. Thanks for the question, Wayne. And then they've got a few more, but I think they're all, I think we've pretty much covered everything there in terms of questions. So I guess in summary, there's still a window. There's protection if that window does close from yourselves. And, you know, we would very much encourage people to come and talk to us if, you know, if you want to do this, if you've got the cash to do it, you can't take a mortgage. And if you want to push the button on it and you're able to action the paperwork quickly and literally this is on you as the investor really to be quite quick with the process, because Irish won't accept people that are going to be slow, then we can push the buttons and make it all happen. So if all those answers are yes, please do, you know, speak to your IP representative, drop us a line, reach out to one of us, and we'll be delighted to discuss further. Thank you for the excellent presentation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, pleasure. We'll see you all soon. Thanks for joining to the audience, and have a great day ahead.
Keep in touch. Bye-bye. Happy Easter.
Thank you, and to you.
Thank you.
Bye.